You're like, let's talk about that time the world almost ended.
Yeah.
So it was a real problem. Okay. And it was a problem that, like anything else, it was something that people knew about. Okay. Like early on, there was this guy his name was Bob Bemer. And so when computers were like becoming a thing, and they started becoming a thing in a commercial way for industries as early as the 50s, this guy, Bob Bemer, was like, hey, this in 1958, he was like, this is a problem where we're calling these date codes, and they had 2-digit date codes. So if it was March 3rd, 1997, the computer would read it as 030397, okay, or whatever the year was. And so in 58, he's like, hey, 42 years, like, this is going to be a problem. But everyone's like, shut up, man. Like, just shut the fuck up. Like, that's 42 years. Like, shut up. So the problem was when you get into the 90s, no one even knew, because the programming was so old, no one even knew how the dates were going to read, okay? Was it going to flip back over like 99 to 00? And was that going to read was it going to read it as 1900? Some of them were like, maybe we'll just go to 2000. Other ones were like, it'll be 1900 or 19100. So like the first 2 digits never. So like that creates like this system of having a lot of problems where it's like you could have some banking problems. You could have, the airplanes and the train systems, like they don't know what time it is. And so they're like, it could trigger and then because all these things are networked together, that if you have system failures based on code on one thing, that people were worried that it would trigger like a widespread failure across many systems, and that it could affect banking, it could affect utilities, it could affect power plants and the grid and all these different things, to the point where it's like, well, we have air traffic controllers and like we can't find the planes because we're tracking them on a certain time, and now they're just like in the past according to the computer, or they're in the future according to the computer. And people just like, they're like, we don't know, like it was like a fear of the unknown. And so in 1995, that's when that phrase Y2K was coined. And once it had like a kind of a catchy name like that, the media picked it up. So it took the media like a year, and then that became a story. So in 1996, you started seeing people talking about it all the time, became a thing, like, Barbara Walters, 60 Minutes, 2020, they're all doing like these stories about Y2K. And this is still, so if you're thinking about like, you think about how our parents are with computers now, this is now 20 something years ago. So those shows were geared towards our parents. Yeah. So people who are like, what a fucking computer, like, so it was like something that they don't understand, that they don't use like ever. And it created like this kind of palpable nervousness about this mysterious technology and the future. And it kind of created like this firestorm that was rooted in a real problem. But it sounds like more and more like the hysteria was kind of the bigger problem. It became almost like a cottage industry, and like that kind of exacerbated some of the fears and some of the problems even too. So you had, like Leonard Nimoy would do like a documentary or like How to Survive. Okay, like he did like a Y2K like special. There was like Y2K cookbooks. There were people building like these bomb shelters. There were people like buying all sorts of waters and stuff, like, red alarm clocks and things to stick in the basement to survive the apocalypse, because nuclear power plants are going to melt down and nuclear bombs are just going to go off because of these computer glitches. And there was a segment of the population, even if it was small, that were like very concerned, and were like, they're preppers. They're just people who are kind of into that shit, where they're just like, they hear something, it's like the apocalypse is coming. And, we're a religious country, so there are people who are like, this is it. You see the people on the street being like, the end is near. Well, there was a lot of the end is near people running around in 1999. And that was like part of the problem, was because as it became closer and closer, the problem wasn't going to be Y2K. It was going to be the hysteria around Y2K. And then in terms of like things that actually happened, it was almost nothing.